Welcome back to Orange Nation. Hour number 2 is underway. This is It's a Sin. I think we're into their top 10 songs. I closed out the link.
This one I remember.
From the Pet Shop Boys. Let me get this open really quick. Sorry, Mike. Very important that I do this. Number 9, 1987. This is a pretty good bump song. Like, this is a good... I could hear this as a show open.
Yeah?
But it wouldn't fit our show because we're Orange Nation and we play Orange Crush.
This is true.
I would guess that Mike McAllister is not a Pet Shop Boys fan. He's probably more grungy.
A little before his time, I would say.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
All right, let's go to our guest line to bring on our good friend, Mike McAllister. Pet Shop Boys before your time. Yes, Mike?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, let's jump right in. Big news yesterday. I don't think it's surprising news, but big news nonetheless that Judah Mintz has been invited to the NBA Draft Combine. Your thoughts on this, and I guess how much does this increase his chances that he's not coming back?
I think it increases them pretty strongly because that tells you he's firmly on the radar of being drafted. And I think the best hope, if you were a Syracuse fan and want Judah to return, the best hope is that he wouldn't get invited. We know that he didn't get invited to the G League camp, so the G League Combine. So the fact that he wouldn't have been either would tell you he's way off the radar in terms of being drafted. And there's been, some articles from some NBA draft experts that are kind of saying he's like a sneaky sleeper second-round pick that could end up being a really good pick for you. So he's starting to get a little bit of draft buzz, which tells me, he's got to be feeling pretty good that he's going to get picked at some point.
All right. So with that in mind, do you feel like Syracuse stands pat? Let's assume he's not coming back. Does Syracuse stand pat at that position, or do they try and add another guard? I mean, I saw Micah Adams-Woods is now on the market, another local guy who's leaving Cincinnati. He originally had announced that he was staying for his 5th year, but now he's in the transfer portal. What are your thoughts? Do you think they look around, or do you think they stand pat with what they've got?
I think you always look around because if you've got an opportunity to improve your roster, I think you take it. But the reality is trying to get a guard to come in and be the third guard, and so your chances of starting are minimal, and you're going to be playing behind both Chance Westry and J.J. Starling, so your role is probably not going to be as substantial as what most in the portal would like. I think it's a difficult recruitment that puts that gives Syracuse a tough ask, I think, to get someone that's good enough to be on your roster and contribute in some capacity. I think what's more likely is your third guard is some combination of Quadir Copeland and Justin Taylor. And the good news about both of those guys is they can also be backups at the forward spot. So you can kind of move guys around quite a bit with those two in the mix. So if I had to guess, I think they'd stand pat with what they have in the backcourt. But, it wouldn't surprise me if they at least looked around a little bit to see if there was an opportunity to improve the roster. But chances are, if you do have that opportunity, it's going to be with someone that's looking for a starting spot.
All right, the Orange hoping that they're not standing pat at the center position, right? They bring in Naheem McLeod for the visit. I know you had a chance to talk to him. It stood out to both of us in your article and what you posted that Jesse Edwards was there, was one of the first people to talk to him and kind of sold him on the program. Did that surprise you at all that Jesse was trying to sell him on going to Syracuse?
That shocked me, to be honest with you. I had to clarify that I heard that correctly when I was interviewing him because, he said, I asked him, which current players did you talk to? And I expected to hear the normal names, right? Oh, yeah, I talked to Penny Williams and, I ran into Chris Bell and, they were telling me to come team up with them. And, that's the type of stuff you typically hear. I wasn't expecting it to be the guy who he would be replacing, who is leaving to go somewhere else. Sounds basically like for the money, but he's saying, listen, come here because they'll develop you and it's a great place to play and all these things. And it's like, okay, well, then doesn't that all apply to you? But anyway, that's a whole separate discussion. But I do think that it speaks to Jesse Edwards' character, the fact that he's willing to have those conversations with someone that's coming in and say, listen, this is a great place to play and I really enjoyed my time and I think you do well here. On top of the fact that the coaching staff trusted him enough to have that conversation, right? They didn't try to keep Jesse Edwards away from Naheem McLeod while he was on campus. So I think that tells you there's still a pretty good relationship there between coaching staff and Jesse. And I think it tells you what type of kid that Jesse is as well, that he would, kind of go out of his way to do that.
What else stood out to you from that conversation with McLeod in terms of his impressions of Syracuse and how the visit went?
Yeah, it seemed like he really bought into what their plan is for him and that he likes the roster that they've got, in terms of what they'd have around him with the guards that they have. And, he specifically mentioned bringing in J.J. Sarley and Chance Westry and, the fact they've got some other guys that can shoot. And he said that they're going to be really athletic and they're going to run. And, that seemed to be something he was intrigued by. So I think Syracuse did a good job in terms of, discussing what the roster is going to look like, discussing what the plan is for him, how he'd fit into all of that. And then, I think having a discussion with a guy like Jesse Edwards, who did develop quite a bit during his time at Syracuse as a big, I think that helps as well because you can look at it and say, listen, I averaged 1 or 2 points a game in my career at one point, just like you did last year. And, now, this past year, I was, one of the best bigs in the ACC and led the league in blocks. So this is a place where they can help you develop that way. And I think all of those things put Syracuse in a very good light. Now he's got an official visit to Mississippi State, I believe starts today. I think that if you're a Syracuse fan, you're hoping he doesn't take any more visits after that. If they don't, I think Syracuse has a really good shot to land him. If he decides he wants to take other visits, then I think that would tell you that perhaps he's not as sold on Syracuse as what we might think based on the conversation that we had with him right after he visited.
Makes sense. Did he give you any idea, Mike, in terms of a timeline of when he wanted to have a decision made?
So he said that as I mentioned, he wanted to take the official visit to Mississippi State. And so I said, okay, so after that, are you taking more visits? Are you going into decision-making mode? He said that was kind of still up in the air. So he wasn't entirely sure. Now, that could mean he doesn't want to share, that he's got an idea in his mind. I'm going to make a decision by the end of this weekend, but he didn't want that public just in case something changed or whatever the case is. Or it could mean that, listen, I just want to go take the visit to Mississippi State. I'll come back home. I'll reassess where I'm at, see if, I feel good about either Syracuse or Mississippi State at that point. If I don't, then, maybe I'll take more visits. It could be one of those two scenarios. I think he probably has an idea in his mind of what, when he wants to commit and, maybe has a school in mind as far as where he's leaning, but, wants to take the Mississippi State visit, see how that goes, and then sort of reassess.
All right, let's turn our attention to another big guy, Donnie Freeman, set to announce his decision tomorrow at 3:30. What can you tell us about his situation and what are the chances Syracuse lands him?
Yeah, he's announcing tomorrow, as you said, one of the best forwards in the 2024 recruiting class. Syracuse has been recruiting him as long as anyone. I think they were his first offer. And he's got a strong relationship with Adrian Autry and Syracuse. Since Autry took over as the head coach, they've put the full court press on. They've been at almost every single one of his AAU games, every one that they're allowed to be at. They've met with him privately, and they've had numerous phone conversations, phone calls, texts, FaceTimes, etc. Hosted him on an official visit. All of those things since Coach Autry took over. So it's I think they've got as good a shot as anybody. And if you're looking at the top 5 that he's got there, I'd almost eliminate Georgia Tech right away because he hasn't visited. They're a very recent offer, so it doesn't seem like that would be a realistic landing spot. I think Iowa might be a little bit too far away for him is kind of my thought on them. But I do think that Alabama is a legitimate threat, and they've been recruiting him pretty hard for a while as well. So that's, if I'm a Syracuse fan, Alabama's the team I'm concerned about the most. But the buzz is certainly that Syracuse is in a pretty good position going into the announcement.
Paulie brought this up yesterday about the perception nationally if Syracuse is able to land him, a quality 6'9" forward that, top 40 type player, and with Adrian Autry, now the head coach there, what would that do for the perception around the country of Syracuse if they're able to land Donnie Freeman tomorrow?
Well, we know that Syracuse basketball is still a very recognizable name brand and has power in the recruiting world. And if you the transition from Boeheim to Autry, if you look at what Autry has done since he's taken over, bringing in J.J. Starling, one of, if not the best transfer prospects in the portal, grabbing another high-profile guard in Chance Westry out of the portal, and then adding his first high-profile, elite-level high school recruit on the recruiting trail, I think that would send a pretty strong message that talent acquisition is, not going to be something he's going to struggle with. That would be a pretty strong message with grabbing those three guys within a few months, I think. So that tells you that Coach Autry has strong connections, that the Syracuse brand is still strong in terms of recruiting and even those, transferring out of other schools, and that, Syracuse is going to be a major player for high-level talent going forward, and that should mean, the more high-level talent you get, the better your roster is, and the more wins should come along with it. So if you're a Syracuse fan, I think you feel pretty encouraged about the direction of how Coach Autry is bringing talent into the program.
All right, Mike, anything football related you want to get across before we let you go today?
Yeah, they've got kind of a familiar name, David Wollaba, who is a transfer offensive lineman from Kentucky, is taking an official visit this weekend. His dad, Dave Wollaba, played in the early to mid-'90s. He was a guard and a center at Syracuse and then played 8 or 9 years in the NFL. So he's coming to visit this coming weekend. I think that's something to keep an eye on. And then they've also got a junior college safety who's class of 2023, so he'd be for this upcoming season. Jacoby Seaborn is taking an official visit, so he's someone to keep an eye on as well. They could be adding, a couple of depth pieces, a couple of quality pieces that will add depth but could also compete for starting spot at some key positions. So keep an eye on those this weekend.
All right, great stuff as always, Mike. We appreciate the time, and I'm sure we'll be talking with you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, our good friend Mike McAllister, publisher of Syracuse on SI. And with that, phone lines open the rest of the way, 315-437-7644. We're back after this on ESPN Radio.